Welcome to Ghani's podcast.
In July 2022, tens of thousands of Sri Lankan citizens marched on the presidential palace and physically overrun the government. After nearly 2 decades of absolute control, the Rajapaksa family was forced into exile by a spontaneous, youth-led uprising. Left standing in the ashes of that massive political explosion is Namal Rajapaksa. At 38 years old, the heir apparent to the country's most powerful dynasty watched his inheritance evaporate overnight. The political blueprint Namal grew up with was built on total dominance. His father, Mahinda Rajapaksa, cemented his legacy by crushing a 26-year insurgency, ruling for years as a modern-day warrior king, backed by the fierce devotion of the country's Sinhala-Buddhist majority. But that impenetrable armor fractured under staggering economic mismanagement. To finance vanity infrastructure projects, the government bloated public debt to 125% of GDP. Then, in a disastrous attempt to stop foreign currency from leaving the island, they abruptly banned chemical fertilizers, destroying the agricultural sector and pushing the country into default. The abstract numbers quickly became a daily fight for survival. Inflation surged past 54%. Citizens endured 13-hour power cuts and languished in miles-long queues just to buy essential fuel and medicine. The resulting protests achieved something entirely new and unprecedented in Sri Lankan political history. Instead of voting along traditional ethnic and religious lines, the electorate united across demographic boundaries, demanding basic governance and the total removal of a corrupt political elite. That massive public anger translated into an electoral earthquake in 2024. Voters handed the presidency and a historic parliamentary supermajority to Anura Kumara Dissanayake, a Marxist-leaning outsider from the National People's Power Coalition. Look at this bar chart from the 2024 presidential race. While Dissanayake captured over 42% of the popular vote, Namal Rajapaksa secured less than 3%. In his own family's rural stronghold of Hambantota, his party's vote share plummeted to single digits. To make matters worse, the new government's anti-corruption dragnet is actively closing in. Namal's younger brother, Yoshitha, faces criminal prosecution for unexplained wealth, while former intelligence chiefs from the Rajapaksa era have been arrested under terrorism laws. Across the globe, human rights organizations and university unions routinely block Namal from speaking, citing his family's wartime record. To the casual observer, the Rajapaksa political brand is a toxic relic. Assuming his political career is over is a massive miscalculation. Namal is executing a highly calculated 10-year strategy designed to reclaim the executive presidency. The first phase is a total ideological pivot. Namal is stripping away the family's traditional, heavy-handed ethno-nationalist rhetoric. In its place, he is projecting the image of a center-right pragmatist, discussing liberalizing shipping routes, digitizing citizen services, and attracting global venture capital. He is aggressively putting distance between himself and the economic catastrophes of the old guard. When pressed on the disastrous tax cuts and fertilizer bans, he frames them as well-intentioned mistakes made by older men who refuse to listen to outside experts. Behind closed doors, he is systematically cleansing the Sri Lanka Pudujana Peramuna, the SLPP party. With his father and uncles stepping back into purely advisory roles, Namal is purging defectors and rebuilding the entire political apparatus from the village level up. He knows he cannot win today. Shedding the toxic weight of the old guard and modernizing his political machine is his mandatory prerequisite for simply surviving this current term in the political wilderness. The second phase of his plan weaponizes the new government's biggest vulnerability. President Dissanayake inherited a bankrupt state and $50 billion in external debt. He is trapped by the strict, inescapable demands of foreign creditors. We see the mechanics of this trap on this scale. To access IMF funds, Sri Lanka agreed to strict conditions, keeping utility prices and taxes high. As the scale tips, the president must inflict neoliberal austerity, crushing working-class voters to satisfy global capital. Namal is aggressively seizing on this friction. At public rallies, he demands the government publish breakdowns of fuel import costs, attacking Dissanayake for keeping domestic prices high while global oil indices drop. He is taking the left's anti-austerity script and reading it back to them. He is not trying to solve the economic crisis. He is patiently waiting for the inevitable public exhaustion with high taxes and expensive electricity to fracture the ruling coalition. The final phase exploits a massive sociological vulnerability. The new government is actively trying to build a secular political culture, disrupting the ethnic triumphalism that defined the country for decades. They refer to the military simply as soldiers, rather than revered war heroes, and challenge the systemic privileges of the Buddhist clergy. But the Sri Lankan state has derived its legitimacy from protecting Theravada Buddhism for centuries. It is a deeply embedded identity that cannot be legislated away overnight. Suppressing that identity creates a volatile cultural vacuum. You can see the friction here. Recently, 500 hardline monks convened the Mahasangha Convention, issuing fiery demands to the president to protect archaeological temple lands and reassert the supremacy of Buddhism in the state structure. As this cultural backlash brews, Namal is perfectly positioned. He is molding the newly rebranded SLPP into the sole legitimate political defender of this threatened traditional identity. When strict IMF constraints prevent a government from delivering rapid economic miracles, middle-class and rural voters historically abandon the anti-corruption narrative. They retreat to the familiar comfort of identity politics. In the immediate future, from 2026 to 2029, Namal's path back to executive power is blocked. The acute trauma of the sovereign default and the immediate legal jeopardy facing his inner circle form an impenetrable wall. His only goal right now is keeping his parliamentary seat and staying out of prison. But look ahead to 2034. By then, Namal will be a veteran politician in his mid-40s. The immediate shadow of his father's controversial tenure will have completely faded from the daily news cycle. This dual-axis chart projects the political mathematics of attrition over the next decade. As the years pass, the visceral memory of the 2022 trauma steadily decays. At the exact same time, public fatigue with strict IMF austerity measures sharply rises. In a fragmented electorate, that environment overwhelmingly favors an established, well-funded political machine. Where these two lines cross is exactly what Namal is aiming for. That intersection creates a highly realistic window of opportunity for a dynastic resurgence. The Rajapaksa name may look like a relic of the past today, but in the cyclical, unforgiving theater of South Asian politics, a tarnished crown is entirely capable of being worn again.
If you like the video, please like, share, and follow Gani's podcast.